Do you ever feel stuck? The alarm goes off and you think, is this really my life? Do you wish you could douse your relationships or your career or even your business with rocket fuel and throw a match on it? End the blah once and for all. They either launch or they burn up and you get to start over. I've been there and I see you. I'm Ben Walters, an entrepreneur, pastor, coach, and consultant. If you're ready to get unstuck and ignite your super pumped life or business, I'll give you the rocket fuel and the match. All you have to do is light it. Today, I am super pumped to share how you can slay the naysaying dragons that are holding you back from taking on really big things. In my case, this was finishing a full 26.2 mile marathon with only one 3-mile training run leading up to the race. Here's the backstory of how I slayed my 3 naysaying dragons to accomplish this. So let's zoom out a little bit and talk about when any of us have a big idea. Most of us, we float that idea with people we know. That might be coworkers, that might be family members or friends. We naturally, as humans, are collaborators. And so as we're thinking about a big thing, we often ask other people what they think. So if you're thinking about popping the big question and asking someone to marry you, what are you going to do? You're going to ask your parents or maybe your friends. Yeah, I was thinking of asking, Kristen to marry me. What do you think? Or the opposite. I'm just not feeling it with, Sally. And so I was thinking about breaking up. What do you guys think? And so we float these big decisions in our lives. I was considering buying a house, or you know what? I'm not happy in my job. I was thinking about starting my own business and being my own boss, or I'm just not getting much traction in my career. I was thinking of going back to school. So all these big decisions, we float and we collaborate. And what we're looking for is permission and affirmation that you can do it, because what we're trying to overcome is in the back of our mind, there's some doubt and some kind of uncertainty. And so in my case, we're going to rewind to 2022. And I was thinking about running a marathon, and I wasn't real sure about it. And so I hadn't registered, but the day was getting closer. In fact, it was the Thursday before the race. So the race is on Sunday. It's a Thursday afternoon. I'm sitting in the stands watching my son play baseball, high school baseball, with some other dads. And for whatever reason, I decided to float the idea. I said, hey guys, I was thinking about running the Flying Pig Marathon this weekend. Now, a little bit of backstory. This is a marathon. The entire name, the Flying Pig Marathon, is a marathon for people who will run a marathon only when pigs fly. So it's kind of the underdog's marathon, the people's marathon, if you will. This isn't the fast track, world-class record, marathon. It's a fun marathon. It's a lot of first-time marathoners. And so I thought, what better place to run a marathon than the Flying Pig? Do you know what the response from these other dads at baseball game was? Here's some of the words. Reckless. You're reckless. That would be foolish. You are ridiculous. Are you serious? You're thinking of doing that? And very quickly you come to the idea, consensus, this is a bad idea. And maybe when you've floated some of those other questions, whether it's popping the question or changing careers or starting a business, you've had similar naysayers where they're like, yeah, what are you thinking? And so there's kind of that, ugh, it's like a gut punch. And so then a lot of times what we do is we retreat and we decide, let's consult an expert. So many of us, we go online and we think, what are the marital success rates if I marry my high school sweetheart at 19? Or, what is the likelihood that a small business that's marginally or undercapitalized is going to succeed? And the experts will tell you probably not well. Or should I be proposing 3 months into a new relationship? And again, the experts are probably going to say, not a good idea. And so in my specific case, I thought, who are the experts in this? And I thought back to the doctor that had done 2 knee surgeries for me, one on each knee. And one of the things he told me, and these were 13 and 10 years ago, but he said, I would really reduce or eliminate all the pounding the pavement runs. And so to me, that meant your knees aren't going to be able to handle running. And so for basically 13 years, I hadn't done any long runs. And so I was like, okay, the guys don't think this is a good idea. My doctor doesn't think this is a good idea. And that kind of combination begins to force the doubts into your own head, this internal dialogue, this internal naysayer. And so you begin to lose confidence in yourself, and self-doubt creeps in, and insecurities rise to the top. And you kind of question yourself, who was I to think I could jump in and run a marathon? Or who am I to pop the question? I don't even know this woman. Or who am I to start a business? I'm no expert. And so those things kind of run through your head. And in my case, I'm thinking, people train dutifully for months to run a marathon, and I have the audacity to think that I can just get off the couch and run a marathon. So I'm synthesizing all this, the other dads, the doctor, my own doubts, and I think they're probably right. This probably is reckless. But there's something in the back of my head that says, man, I still want to do this. And so I'm kind of mulling it all around. And after the game at home that evening, I just kept thinking about it. I want to do this, but I don't want to let these naysayers slay my dream. And so I began to go through this framework, or this mental exercise that I've used in so many different areas of my life to tackle hard things. And the first thing I did was to kind of just begin compilating supporting data. And I realized I had done 2 marathons before. Now, they were 18 years earlier, but I have completed marathons. And I thought, I'm in really good shape. I'm not running straight miles, but I was playing 2.5 hours of pickup basketball with only mild knee discomfort. I was working jobs that had me standing 8 to 12 hours per day. And one of the metrics for kind of your conditioning is time on feet. And I had good time on feet. And when the doctor told me not to run to save my knees, I was a lot heavier then. Now I was carrying a lot less weight, which meant a lot less pounding on the knees. So despite the pessimism of the dads at baseball, there were plenty of people in this endeavor who would support me. When I thought about this, there was my wife, there were my kids, all my neighbors. We've always had a very tight-knit community around us, and they are very supportive of one another. Even my friends at church, I thought, all these people are going to support me. And so I thought, well, there's only one way to find out if I can run. I haven't run in 13 years, right? So at 10 o'clock at night, I was watching Suns basketball, and I was getting irritated with their performance. And I decided, let's strap on the running shoes and do a test run. And the actual marathon race goes right around my house. In fact, it's the hardest part because it's the climb. It's a 2-mile climb from downtown up into Eden Park. And so I decided I'm going to go do a little 3-mile test run through the hardest part of the race course and see how I feel. Now, I did this, and here's the thing. My conditioning wasn't bad. I wasn't coughing up a lung or cramping or keeled over with both hands on my knees. And my knees felt fine. They weren't bad. And my time was solid. It wasn't like it took me, an hour to do 3 miles. And so I thought, this is pretty good data. But now it was decision time, because I had to either slay the naysaying dragons or let the naysaying dragons rule the day. And so how did I do that? Well, the first thing is, and this is the framework here. There are the armchair naysayers. They might be parents, coworkers, friends. These are the people that are pessimistic and negative and tell you can't do it. But for every naysayer, most of us have what I call cheerleaders in your lives. These are the people that say, you know what? I believe in you. You can do this. And so instead of focusing on who tells me I can't do it, I shifted my thinking to start listing all the people who supported this idea and talking to people who said, go for it. And let me tell you just kind of a quick disclaimer. If every single person tells you it's a bad idea, that overwhelming majority means it probably is a bad idea. But if it's balanced, where you've got some pessimistic naysayers and you've got some cheerleaders, then okay, those balance each other out and it kind of comes a wash. So anyway, I thought about the cheerleaders and the homemade signs along the route, and that's kind of cool. So those balance each other out. These people who are your cheerleaders are also your safety net in life if you fail. And there's something comforting to know that even if you go out and fall flat on your face in business or a career or whatever that is, you have people around you that love you, that care for you, that'll pick you up. So that's the first group, your cheerleaders that help you slay the armchair naysayer. Then there's the second thing, which is the expert naysayer. And in this case, it was a surgeon who operated on me 10 and 13 years ago. But here's the thing. I had been lifting. I was stronger now. I was lighter. I was in good shape. I had been working jobs that had me on my feet. And so I began to think, even though my marathon training wasn't the traditional training, I was in really good condition. And I thought more. Sometimes in life, we too easily dismiss ourselves because we think we're not qualified. In episode 6, I interview interior designer Lauren Kitchen, and we discuss how she felt disqualified from opening her own business because she didn't have a design degree. Yet she has been creating fabulous designs since she was in college. Her designs are award-winning, and if you look at her work, you can tell she has that design eye. You wouldn't know she didn't graduate from the top design school in the country. I thought back to my own life. I've started and acquired and sold numerous profitable, very desirable businesses. But here's what I don't have. I don't have an MBA. So should I be apologetic or run from my next venture because the world or the experts say, you know what, Ben, you're not qualified? No. But here's why. Most of us have transferable skills and expertise from other realms of our lives. When I think about Lauren's case, Lauren had been the project manager on multiple construction projects, from the building of buildings all the way to the design, interior design of those. She had been a rock star in corporate America, and she was the CEO of a complex family of 5. And the entire time, do you know what she'd been doing? She'd been doing pro bono interior design work for friends and family. And so no expert should ever tell her she's not qualified to run her own business, because here's the reality. She's killing it. So this expert naysayer slaying our dreams shouldn't have that power. Don't give them that power. Don't let the internet tell you that because 80% of small businesses fail, you should just cash it in, even if you have a great idea. Don't give up that easy. Be the captain of your own ship. Here's the final and hardest naysayer dragon to slay. It's that internal naysayer. It's that little voice in your head that says, you can't do it, or I don't really think that's possible, or who do you think you are to tackle such a big thing? You're getting a little full of yourself. My grandma would say, you're getting a little too big for your britches, mister. And there's that kind of inner detractor, right? We're our own worst critic, all of us. And so to that, there's a way to slay that dragon too. Here's what I do. And this is, for me, spot on. When I hear that little naysayer internal dragon trying to slay the dream, I make a list of hard things I have done. In this case, I wrote a list. I said, I've run 2 marathons before, so take that. I've done marathons. This isn't something I'm completely ill-equipped for. And I thought, I've come back from 2 knee surgeries and a foot surgery, and I'm out there killing it on the basketball court with guys half my age. And I thought how I was in great shape. After, like many of us, I came out of the pandemic a little bit pudgy, a little bit rounder than I wish I was. But I worked in 2021 and up to that point in 2022, and I was in pretty darn tight conditioning. So I began to think of all the successes I've had, not worry about what the failure might be. And the second thing was, I do this exercise where I say, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you fail in this endeavor, what's the worst that can happen? And what would you do? And so I thought, okay, I get out there on mile 15 and I just can't go another step. You know what I'd do? I'd call my wife and I'd say, gave it my best, puttered out at mile 15. Do you know what? She'd come get me. She wouldn't say, wow, you were a real idiot for trying that, because she's in my cheerleader camp. Now, if I'd called one of the dads from baseball, I might have got a different response, which is another kind of what if. What if I had the worst case scenario? What if I had to go back to my baseball dads and say, yeah, I didn't make it? They'd probably give me a lot of hard time, right? But what I like to do is I like to craft what my response would be. Even if I'm never going to say it to them, it somehow emboldens me to say, you know what? You're such a big shot. You were sitting on your couch that afternoon, right? I don't know. I don't think you ever get up at 6:30 and run 10 miles, let alone 15 or 20 where I petered out. So next time I see you out on the marathon race course, let me know. Because right now you aren't doing squat. Now, that might be a little aggressive, a little hostile, and that's only a dialogue in my head, but it's a way to kind of punch back at the people who are doubting you. The final thing I thought about is, what if the doctor's right and I hurt my knees and I'm not able to run? And then I thought, I haven't been running anyway, so what am I losing? And so as I began to play that out in my mind, I began to slay that internal dragon by remembering things that I've done before that were hard, and remembering that even if I fail, it's not going to be the end of the world. And so here I am. I slayed the armchair naysayer with my cheerleaders. I slayed the expert naysayer with relevant experience and skills that I did have. And I slayed that internal naysayer by reminding myself of past successes and that even negative outcomes aren't that bad. I also thought about, would the regret of not doing this be worse than actually failing at it? And for many of us to go back in life and say, boy, at this point, I wish I'd have done that. And at this point, I wish I'd have done that. And here, sure wish I'd tried that. That is horrible, to live a life of regret. So I slayed the naysaying dragons. I grabbed my phone and I registered for the race. And then here's what I did. I let people know I was going to run the race that weekend. I texted those dads and I say, I'm going to be out on the race course. And I let my neighbors know, and my friends and my family, people at church. Now that did two things. One, it put cheerleaders out there on the race course for me, which is awesome. But the second thing is, it put fear of failure into my heart. There was some accountability. There is a tremendous motivation in thinking, I'm going to go out there and publicly flop in front of all my closest friends and family. And so by doing that, you are more committed to completing that hard task. Public proclamations are a great motivator. Well, here's what happened. I took off like gangbusters. At most marathons, there's a lot of adrenaline. Did the first 6 miles, 9 minutes, 24 seconds. But around my house is around mile 8 and 9. And the one thing I'd forgotten in the 18 years since I did previous marathons was that there's a lot of chafing in marathons, and it really hurts and it's super uncomfortable. So you know what I did? I did a pit stop at home between mile 8 and 9. I came home, I got rid of all my wet clothes, showered, dried off good, and then I lubricated the spots that I should have lubricated right from the beginning. Now that's out of the box, but I'm running my race and I'm going to run it my way. Got back out there on the course at the halfway mark. I was running a 10, 12 mile, so I lost some time. And then I started to slow down. The lack of training, let's not think we can just gut through all of that. That comes home to roost at some point. And so I slowed down to 11:28. And then at mile 20, I hit what runners call the wall. I just felt like, is this the time I'm going to call my wife and tell her to pick me up? But I didn't. I powered through. Now I did call my wife and I said, I need a pick me up. And do you know what she did? She came with my German Shepherd, my beloved Austin, who is a 100-pound kind of walking buddy and training partner of mine. And he met me on the course at mile 22. So from mile 22 to mile 25, I walked with my dog, and truth be told, he pulls pretty hard. So that was actually helpful. And so I got to mile 25 and then I gave my dog back to my wife, Kristen, and I kicked it in. I did a 9-minute mile on that final mile of the 26 miles. And I finished the race in 5 hours, 20 minutes. It was a time of 12:13 per mile. And I finished 123rd out of 160 in my age group. I finished in the bottom quarter of the racers. But that didn't matter because I had slayed the 3 naysaying dragons that were facing me, that were telling me, you can't do this. And I had proven to myself that I can do hard things. But I also learned that if I had actually trained, it would have been a lot easier and I could take on something more difficult. Slaying this dragon gave me the confidence later to train for a 50-mile rim to rim to rim run through the Grand Canyon. So here's a quick wrap up to slay the naysaying dragons. First, slay the armchair dragons with your cheerleaders and supporters. Second, slay the expert dragons by remembering all the skills and experience you do have, even if it's not with formal education titles or exact apples to apples experience. And finally, slay the internal dragons by reminding yourself of hard things you've done in the past and what the worst outcome could be. Now, before we go, a quick disclaimer. If you've been laying on your couch for the last year or 2 or 10, eating Doritos, You shouldn't go out and run a marathon this weekend, no matter how many cheerleaders you have in your corner. It could be detrimental to your health. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a walk around the block or even sign up for a 5K. Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped podcast. If you enjoyed today's show as much as I did, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app and tell your friends about the show so others can find and benefit from the Super Pumped community. And finally, to put the ideas from today's show into action, visit us at superpumped.com to view the show notes, book a complimentary consultation, or take our free business launch readiness assessment. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.